Howdy.
And welcome to Larry's Library.
Hello, welcome to Larry's Library. I'm continuing now on Pinocchio. Pinocchio. Now, this is not your Disney version of Pinocchio. So the chapters aren't numbered, but they have titles. But the titles are very long. So, for example, the title of the chapter, which is chapter 4, I think, that we're starting today, is The Story of Pinocchio and the Talking Cricket, from which we see that naughty boys cannot endure to be corrected by those who know more than they do. Kind of wordy for a chapter title. But here we are. Well then, children, I must tell you that whilst poor Geppetto was being taken to prison for no fault of his, that imp Pinocchio, finding himself free from the clutches of the carabineer, ran off as fast as his legs could carry him. That he might reach home the quicker, he rushed across the fields, and in his mad hurry, he jumped high banks, thorn hedges, and ditches full of water, exactly as a kid or a leveret would have done if pursued by hunters. Having arrived at the house, he found the street door ajar. He pushed it open, went in, and having secured the latch, threw himself seated on the ground, and gave a great sigh of satisfaction. But his satisfaction did not last long, for he heard someone in the room who was crying, "Crack, crack, crack!" "Who calls me?" said Pinocchio in a fright. "It is I." Pinocchio turned round and saw a big cricket crawling slowly up the wall. "Tell me, cricket, who may you be?" "I am the talking cricket, and I have lived in this room 100 years and more." "And now, however, this room is mine," said the puppet, "and if you would do me a pleasure, go away at once without even turning round." "I will not go," answered the cricket, "until I have told you a great truth." "Tell it me then, and be quick about it." "Woe to those boys who rebel against their parents and run away capriciously from home. They will never come to any good in the world, and sooner or later they will repent bitterly." "Sing away, cricket, as you please and as long as you please. For me, I have made up my mind to run away tomorrow at daybreak, because if I remain I shall not escape the fate of all other boys. I shall be sent to school and shall be made to study either by love or by force. To tell you in confidence, I have no wish to learn. It is much more amusing to run after butterflies or to climb trees and to take the young birds out of their nests." "Poor little goose! But do you not know that in that way you will grow up a perfect donkey, and that everyone will make game of you?" "Hold your tongue, you wicked, ill-omened croaker!" shouted Pinocchio. But the cricket, who was patient and philosophical, instead of becoming angry at this impertinence, continued in the same tone. "But if you do not wish to go to school, why not at least learn a trade, if only to enable you to earn honestly a piece of bread?" "Do you want me to tell you," replied Pinocchio, who was beginning to lose patience, "amongst all the trades in the world there is only one that really takes my fancy." "And that trade, what is it?" "It is to eat, drink, sleep, and amuse myself, and to lead a vagabond life from morning to night." "As a rule," said the talking cricket with the same composure, "all those who follow that trade end almost always either in a hospital or in prison." "Take care, you wicked, ill-omened croaker! Woe to you if I fly into a passion!" "Poor Pinocchio, I really pity you." "Why do you pity me?" "Because you are a puppet, and what is worse, because you have a wooden head." At these last words, Pinocchio jumped up in a rage, and snatching a wooden hammer from the bench, he threw it at the talking cricket. Perhaps he never meant to hit him, but unfortunately it struck him exactly on the head, so that the poor cricket had scarcely breath to cry, "Crick, crick, crick," and then he remained dried up and flattened against the wall. Jiminy Cricket. No, it's not Jiminy Cricket. He's a dead cricket. So, Chapter 5. Pinocchio is hungry and searches for an egg to make himself an omelet, but just at the most interesting moment, the omelet flies out of the window. Night was coming on, and Pinocchio, remembering that he had eaten nothing at all day, began to feel a gnawing in his stomach that very much resembled appetite. But appetite with boys travels quickly, and in fact, after a few minutes, his appetite had become hunger, and in no time his hunger became ravenous. a hunger that was really quite insupportable. Poor Pinocchio ran quickly to the fireplace where a saucepan was boiling and was going to take off the lid to see what was in it. But the saucepan was only painted on the wall. You can imagine his feelings. His nose, which was already long, became longer by at least 3 fingers. He then began to run about the room, searching in the drawers in every imaginable place, in hopes of finding a bit of bread. If it was only a bit of dry bread, a crust, a bone left by a dog, a little moldy pudding of Indian corn, a fish bone, a cherry stone, in fact, anything that he could gnaw. But he could find nothing. Nothing at all. Absolutely nothing. And in the meanwhile his hunger grew, and poor Pinocchio had no other relief than yawning. And his yawns were so tremendous that sometimes his mouth almost reached his ears. And after he had yawned, he spluttered and felt as if he was going to faint. Then he began to cry desperately, and he said, "The talking cricket was right. I did wrong to rebel against my papa and to run away from home. If my papa was here, I should not now be dying of yawning. Oh, what a dreadful illness hunger is!" Just then he thought he saw something in the dust heap, something round and white that looked like a hen's egg. To give a spring and seize hold of it was the affair of a moment. It was indeed an egg. "Hello, Kevin." Pinocchio's joy beats description. It could only be imagined. Almost believing it must be a dream, he kept turning the egg over in his hands, feeling it and kissing it. And as he kissed it, he said, "And now how shall I cook it? Shall I make an omelette? No, it would be better to cook it in a saucer. Or would it not be more savory to fry it in the frying pan? Or shall I simply boil it? No, the quickest way of all is to cook it in a saucer. I am in such a hurry to eat it." Without loss of time, he placed an earthenware saucer on a brazier full of red-hot embers. Into the saucer, instead of oil or butter, he poured a little water, and when the water began to smoke, tack, he broke the eggshell over it that the contents might drop in. But instead of the white and the yolk, a little chicken popped out, very gay and polite. Making a beautiful courtesy, it said to him, "1,000 thanks, Master Pinocchio, for saving me the trouble of breaking the shell. Adieu until we meet again. Keep well, and my best compliments to all at home." Thus saying, it spread its wings, darted through the open window, and flying away was lost to sight. The poor puppet stood as if he had been bewitched, with his eyes fixed, his mouth open, and the eggshell in his hand. Recovering, however, from his first stupefaction, he began to cry and scream and to stamp his feet on the floor in desperation, and amidst his sobs he said, "Indeed, the talking cricket was right. If I had not run away from home, and if my papa was here, I should not now be dying of hunger. Oh, what a dreadful illness hunger is!" And as his stomach cried out more than ever, and he did not know how to quiet it, he thought he would leave the house and make an excursion in the neighborhood in hopes of finding some charitable person who would give him a piece of bread. And that's the end of that chapter. So chapter 6. Pinocchio falls asleep with his feet on the brazier and wakes in the morning to find them burnt off. He burns his feet off. What do you think of that? Can't run much after that. It was a wild and stormy winter's night. The thunder was tremendous and the lightning so vivid that the sky seemed on fire. A bitter, blusterous wind whistled angrily, and raising clouds of dust swept over the country, causing the trees to creak and groan as it passed. Pinocchio had a great fear of thunder, but hunger was stronger than fear. He therefore closed the house door and made a rush for the village, which he reached in 100 bounds, with his tongue hanging out and panting for breath like a dog after game. But he found it all dark and deserted. The shops were closed, the windows shut, and there was not so much as a dog in the street. It seemed the land of the dead. Pinocchio, urged by desperation and hunger, laid hold of the bell of a house and began to peal it with all his might, saying to himself, "That will bring somebody." And so it did. A little old man appeared at the window with a nightcap on his head, and he called to him angrily, "What do you want at such an hour?" "Would you be kind enough to give me a little bread?" "Wait there, I'll be right back directly," said the little old man, thinking he had to do with one of those rascally boys who amused themselves at night by ringing the house bells to rouse respectable people who were sleeping quietly. After half a minute, the window was again opened, and the voice of the same little old man shouted to Pinocchio, "Come underneath and hold out your cap." Pinocchio pulled off his cap, But just as he held it out, an enormous basin of water was poured down on him, watering him from head to foot as if he had been a pot of dried-up geraniums. He returned home like a wet chicken, quite exhausted with fatigue and hunger, and having no longer strength to stand. He sat down and rested his damp and muddy feet on a brazier full of burning embers. And then he fell asleep. And while he slept, his feet, which were wooden, took fire, and little by little they burnt away and became cinders. Pinocchio continued to sleep and to snore as if his feet belonged to someone else. At last, about daybreak, he awoke because someone was knocking at the door. "Who is there?" he asked, yawning and rubbing his eyes. "It is I," answered a voice. And the voice was Geppetto's voice. And we'll call it a time there. The next chapter is Geppetto returns home, makes the puppet new feet, and gives him the breakfast that the poor man had bought for himself. So that is where we'll start tomorrow. Thank you very much.
That has been a long time without him.
This has been Larry's Library.
Bye.
Keep your hands clean.
I'm so tired.